Hey YouTube, I'm back. This is Lydia with Sweet King's Garden. If you recognize that I'm wearing the same thing as I was in the last video, it's because it's exactly the same day. I just wrapped up my garden tour and now I'm going to head outside to harvest some stuff. So let's do that. So on the agenda today is sugar snap peas, cucumbers, and cucamelons. What I have is a roux apron. You'll probably see a bunch of gardeners wear this on YouTube. I have other brands of gardening aprons. I got all of my aprons this year for Christmas and for my birthday. It's because a lot of my family members knew that I was embarking on this gardening adventure this year. So this will be my first time using it and I'm super excited. So I'm going to start with the trellis here that has my sugar snap peas. So what I am going to do is I'm seeing some yellow cucumbers that are very small. They're not looking really very good. I'm taking them off because I don't want the plants to focus energy on something that doesn't seem to be doing well. Funny thing with cucumbers is they're sneaky. I find that cucumbers and zucchinis always hide. So you may not think you have anything until you look one day and you see something that's like 3 times as large as it should be because it was hidden on the vine. Oh yeah. Yeah, these are huge down here. Yeah, this is a big guy. This is a pickling cucumber. This is not the size that we want them to get to. Okay, so this is my haul so far. Okay, moving on the other side. I think I'm only going to be able to get these cucumbers in and then unload my bag and then come back for cucamelons because they're so tiny. I don't want them to get squished. So last year was my second year making pickles. I had my first pickle party with close friends of ours, my best friend and her 2 daughters, and it was a lot of fun. So this year we've been anxiously awaiting another pickle party. If you have little ones or close friends like I do that have kids, it is such a fun activity to do with them because you can still be creative. And then who doesn't like pickles? And of course I sent them home with their own homemade jars of pickles that they were able to enjoy. Oh yeah, here's a sneaky one. It's another sneaky cucumber. I have some that are still kind of small. I could probably pickle them, but I think I'm gonna leave them on for the next wave. think we've harvested all that we can for right now. But that's not bad. Okay, so I've just gone inside to grab a bowl, and I'm gonna gently take off my apron so I don't spill cucumbers and sugar snappies. I'm gonna harvest our last item, which are the cucamelons. Don't think I need my garden shears. They just kind of pull right off pretty easy. My garden shears aren't very sharp anyway. Oh, these are just so cute. It's funny when you see a big cucumber or a big cucamelon, because they're not really big, but you're like, oh wow, that's bigger than the other ones. Alright, so this looks like that's the end of my cucamelon haul. I was going to take you all inside to show you the produce, and then I was like, wait, I kind of have a table outside, so let me just show you what our haul is for today. So, not too bad. We have enough to test out some pickling some cucamelons. Not too bad for our first haul. And these sugar snap peas, honestly, I just love eating them raw. They're super crunchy and sweet. So these will just be my snack for this week. So I'm gonna take this all inside, and then I will show you a pickling series next. Hey there, it's now a few days later, and I am just now having a chance to pickle all of those cucumbers and cucamelons that we harvested from the garden the other day. So let me show you what I have set up here. So I measured and washed all of the cucumbers and cucamelons. We have about 10 pounds, probably closer to 12 cucumbers here. And what I did was I rinsed all of the cucumbers and laid them on a tea towel and just made sure that I arranged these cucumbers by size. The reason being is because I'm going to end up making different types of dill pickles today. We're going to use these smaller pickles here for whole pickles. We'll just leave them whole and put them in a large jar. For these medium-sized pickles, I usually use a mandolin and slice them into pickle chips. And then for these larger cucumbers, we're actually going to cut them lengthwise and turn them into pickle spears. And then of course we have a little bit of cucamelons, and this will be really the very first time that I've ever pickled cucamelons, so I'm looking forward to that. Because this is tester, I'm really just using a small quantity, and they are going to go in the same dill pickle brine and seasoning mix that we have. In terms of the brine, we then have 3 ingredients, which we are going to mix this all together and bring to a boil. We have kosher salt, granulated sugar, and white distilled vinegar. And then in terms of our dill seasoning mix that will go into each of the jars, we have a mixture of whole black peppercorn, dill seed, some coriander seeds, mustard seeds, and then crushed red pepper. All together, I mix them into this jar, and then I'll just take a tablespoon or so and put them into individual jars once we're ready to separate the pickles. Then we have our pickle crisp granules, and this is what's going to give you that snap. And I found this at my local Tractor Supply, and you only need about 1/8 of a teaspoon per jar when you're making pickles, and this helps preserve that crispiness in your pickles. For fresh ingredients, aside from the cucumbers, we have about 30 cloves of garlic here. This equates to about 3 full heads of garlic, and it is a bit time consuming peeling them all by hand, so just keep in mind in terms of preparation. And then lastly, I have some fresh dill. Here I have both the regular herb part and then the flower. You all know by now, I have plenty of dill in the garden, which is another reason why we are making dill pickles today, because we're trying to maximize what we have. In terms of supplies, I do have a mandolin. This is going to help me slice the pickles. And then I have a large pot, and this is what we're going to make our brine in. This is a very easy recipe, which I will link down below with the measurements and all that. But I want to make an important note about canning. Today we are making refrigerated pickles. So these do not have an unlimited shelf life. They stay in the refrigerator, and just make sure you do your own research when you are canning or exploring anything regarding to canning, because you want to make sure you're using the proper storage techniques, not using any blemished produce, and just make sure you do your research. Do not rely on this video for a full breakdown of how to make refrigerated pickles. This is just what I'm doing, and I will show you everything that I am doing. And then lastly, in terms of supplies, you will need plenty of canning jars. So I ran all of these jars through my dishwasher under the sanitize mode, and they are all sterilized and ready to go. I have assorted varieties of jars, and this is just because I'm making different types of dill pickles today. I am also using brand new lids, brand new bands. These supplies are necessary when you are doing any sort of canning, again, because you want to be very careful not to grow any bacteria. So with all of that said, I'm going to get started on prepping these cucumbers some more. I'm going to get the brine started while I work on slicing the cucumbers, and then it's a really fast process from here. Okay, so I'm going to get started on slicing up the pickles for pickle chips. So right now I am cutting the ends of the cucumbers that have the residual pieces of the vine, because I do not want this to cause the pickles to get moldy. So I am taking those medium-sized cucumbers that I showed, and I am just slicing off the tops, and then we will go ahead and compost the discarded ends so nothing goes to waste. I just hit record. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I have the brine. It was brought to a boil. I turned it on low, and now it's nice and hot. I have my sterilized jars ready. I have my cucumbers all sliced and ready to go. And now I'm going to divide the dill pickle seasoning into my jars. Now I'm not sure how many jars this is going to go through, so I'm going to start with probably adding about a tablespoon per jar, and maybe a tablespoon and a half for the larger jars, just to make sure we have enough season in all of them. And again, actually it looks like I'll add about a half a tablespoon in each of these pint-sized jars. So again, I'm putting about a half a tablespoon in the pint-sized jars, and for these quarts, I'm just putting a full tablespoon. After I have the dill seasoning in, I'm going to go behind and add about 2 cloves of garlic per jar, probably 1 clove for the smaller jars that will be dedicated for the cucamelons. And of course, if you love garlic like I do, you could always go a little heavy. Again, as I mentioned before, that's one of the fun things with pickles, is you could always kind of experiment and make them your own. I'll probably put 3 cloves of garlic in the larger jars. After the garlic cloves, I am going to take fresh dill and put them into the jars. You will find that the recipe that I've linked in this video does not actually call for fresh dill, mainly because the dill seasoning mix contains the dill seed. However, I absolutely love a strong dill flavor, and I'm growing a heck of a lot of it this season, so it also just makes the jars look nice and pretty. So this isn't an exact science, obviously. As you can see, I'm just spreading the dill evenly across these jars, and then I'm going to add some pretty dill flowers to these jars as well, just to add something I'm just realizing I'm wearing green today, so I've coordinated this project perfectly today. Okay, so like I said, once you have everything prepped, this goes very, very fast. So now what we're ready to do is add our cucumbers and cucamelons into our jars. For pickling or canning, you want to make sure you pack your jars. So I'm going to start with the whole pickles that we have because these will be designated. Actually, I'm going to put them in these medium-sized jars here. I don't think I have enough jars actually, because these spears aren't tall. I'm going to start with adding this pickle spears too. I'm going to start with adding the pickle spears to the large jars here and pack these nice and snug. The goal when you're canning refrigerator pickles is to allow for as little, the least amount of air as possible. One of the things that I didn't show on camera, but as I was cutting my cucumbers into these spears, I wanted to make sure that the length did not exceed the height of the jar, because you want to make sure that you're allowing about a ½ inch of headspace, which means the gap between where the pickles and brine will be in comparison to where the lid will be. So this is what it looks like to have a nice tightly packed jar. And I'm seeing now that I did not sterilize enough large jars because I actually have some sliced cucumber spears on the other side of my countertop too. I will say my husband's currently eating a lunch meat sandwich with homemade pickles, and I could hear the crunch from that from here. That was a good thing, it wasn't a dig. I was talking about the pickle granule, yeah. And I made them last summer. Not saying that you can keep these for a year, but just saying. So I'm gonna reserve this large jar because I don't know if I wanna put more spears or put the whole pickles in them. But for these pint-size jars, I'm going to squeeze as many pickle chips. And by the way, this is how many pickle chips. I don't even know weight-wise how much that equates to. But I ended up making a lot of... I did not sterilize enough jars, and I had a feeling that was going to happen, but I don't know with this recipe what the equivalent is. It's one of those things that I kind of just like assume the risk and know that I might have to pop these in the refrigerator and work on these again tomorrow. So again, I left about a ½ inch of headspace. We're packing these pickled chips in here, nice and snug. All right, and we're gonna put some cucamelons in here. It looks like they fit snugly into one jar. Use some elbow grease to squeeze that one in. I could probably make 5 more large jars to use up the rest of my pickle spears and whole pickles that I made. So I'm gonna have to sterilize them first thing tomorrow morning and make the rest of my pickles then. I have made pickles. I needed 2 days to make them total, where I prepared the brine ahead of time, refrigerated it, and then I reheated it over the stove. Those pickles turned out fine. So it's getting late. I'm not gonna be able to I won't have time to start a second process. So we're just going to process what we have now. and save the rest for tomorrow. These are the pickle chips that I have left, and I have a whole cutting board, small cutting board full, a plate, and then we have one large jar worth of whole pickles. So these will all wait for tomorrow, and that is fine. And now we can add our brine on top. Now, what I'm going to do is I might stuff a clove or two and top these with some fresh dill, just to help even out the flavor throughout all of the jars. I have plenty of dill, so there's no shortage on that. And again, this will just add something pretty to the top of the jars if I have enough headspace. And actually, before I add the brine, I'm gonna add the pickle crisp granule. I should have actually added this to the bottom. We're adding about 1/8 of a teaspoon. To each of these. Now we're ready to ladle the very hot liquid. It is now several days later, and I can finally show you where we ended up with pickling. So a couple of days ago, I was pickling those 12 pounds of cucumbers. I accidentally ran out of large quart-sized jars for those pickle spears, so I had to pickle the rest of those the next day. So what I ended up doing was I had about 1/4 of the brine left over that was on the stove. I just threw the brine into a jar, put it in the refrigerator, and then I made about 1/2 of the recipe of brine and then added the two mixtures together. I brought the new brine to a boil, and then I mixed in the brine from the day before, mixed it together, made sure that it came up to temperature to where the entire mixture was nice and warm, and then I proceeded to fill the rest of my jars. So just keep that in mind if you happen to either run out of time or run out of supplies like I did. Know you do have some flexibility. So let me show you what all we have from pickling. So we have 5 quart-sized jars, and I have pickle spears, and then I have some whole pickles, and then I actually ended up having some extra pickle chips that I shoved in. Reason being is I wanted to eliminate as much empty space as possible. So you will see that I packed these jars as full as I could get them. And then as I packed these jars, I then filled up the brine, leaving about 1/2 inch of headspace. And then what I did was just take a damp paper towel, and I went ahead and cleaned the rim of the jars before I put the lids in. Additionally, I used a chopstick to try and get any air bubbles out of the jars that I can as possible. It's not going to be perfect. There is still some air, but it's important when you do can, especially for the refrigerated pickles, you want to try and remove as much air bubbles as possible. So after you wipe the rims of the jars, get the air bubbles out, you add your lids to your jars, and you let them sit overnight on your counter. You will start to hear the marvelous sound of your cans popping, and that just means that your can is sealing, and that's exactly what we want them to do. Now, before I put these in the refrigerator for good, I am going to remove the lids to these just so that I know if for any reason the lids become unpopped, I'll know that the seal has been broken. Otherwise, you can't really tell if the seal's been broken with the lids there, because it's of course going to force it shut. So I have 7 quart-size pickles, and then I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pint-sized jars, and all of these jars are pickled chips. And yeah, this is what I'm saying. You can really tell that these are packed in there. And then I have 2 little jars, one with the pickle pickle chips, and then these are cucamelons. It looks like I probably could have squeezed more cucamelons in here. I actually picked a whole bunch more of these, and I am going to make some more pickled cucamelons because I can't wait to try them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and can see pickling isn't as scary as it's made out to be. Again, I will share the recipe to what I followed down below, and just keep in mind, be flexible. I think the next time I make pickles, as soon as my jalapeno peppers are ready in the garden, I'm going to make some spicy dill pickles because I tried them for the first time last year and they tasted amazing. So if you give this a try, or if you have your own favorite pickle recipe, feel free to share in the comments down below, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Babe, if you need to go downstairs, you can go. Alex?
I got stuff I need to do.
Oh gosh.